Hi there, I'm Nicole. I am a writer and story nerd, and welcome to my AuthorTube channel. So today, I am analyzing that classic movie, critically acclaimed Camp Rock. I'm sorry, are you saying that you spent 3 hours watching and analyzing the 2008 Disney Channel movie made for television starring Demi Lovato and the Jonas Brothers in order to learn about story structure? Yes, I am. In this series, I break down the structure of these movies and or books and or plays or whatever using a fun Google form that you can find below about story structure. And then I talk about it and talk about why the story structure works and makes it a good story, or where there are gaps and potentially how it could be better. Am I an expert storyteller? Nope, not at all. It's a lot easier to analyze something than it is to actually write the thing, but it's really fun and cool to talk about. So, in case you were not a preteen in the year 2008, Camp Rock is a movie about a girl named Mitchie who goes to Camp Rock, which is a rock camp where they sing a lot and dance and I guess learn how to be rock stars. The end of camp concert is called the Final Jam. There is a winner. This year at the camp there is a bad boy from the band Connect 3, which is very famous, Jonas Brothers, and he will be recording a, demo or something, record, song, with the winner of the Final Jam. Mitchie makes very good friends with the popular girls at camp and lies about the fact that she is only there because her mom is working in the kitchen and therefore she got a discounted rate. Spoiler alert, the lie ends up blowing up in her face. Mitchie loses all of her status as a popular person. She is not able to work in the Final Jam or perform in the Final Jam, but she kind of finds a way around it and she falls in love with pop star Connect 3 Jonas Brother dude. Thought the best synopsis? Alright, so when I go through my structure sheet, which I will also link below in case you want to reference it, one of the things that I found very interesting about this movie is that they enter Camp Rock within the first 5 minutes. So generally, you know, the first act is like the introduction, some exposition, introduction to the ordinary world, and then the second act is the extraordinary world. Well, that's not exactly what happens here. We get about 5 minutes of Mitchie like at home at her high school with her parents, and then she ends up at Camp Rock 5 minutes in. This movie is 90 minutes, which if you're wondering, if you divide by 4 is 22 minutes. So every act should be about 22 minutes. So I was confused at first. It kind of seems like the crisis of the first act isn't a call to an adventure and they enter the extraordinary world like immediately, like 5 minutes in, without even having a first act. I think part of the reason why they did this is because since Camp Rock is so different than the ordinary world of where like Mitchie is, we have a lot of setting up to do at the camp. We have to meet the instructors, we have to meet the other campers, we need to get to know this cast of characters, we need to be introduced to the object of desire. There's a lot of introductions that need to happen. So if you waited 22 minutes to actually go to the camp, then that would be kind of sucky. So, but there is a disadvantage to this approach, which is that we really don't get to know very much about Mitchie. We get about 2 minutes of her with her friend on her last day of school. They kind of hint at the fact that the friend is the geek. She's like, I just passed my AP Mandarin exam. She says something in Mandarin. She's very smart. Mitchie sings the song Who Will I Be? A little bit on the nose if you ask me, but this is meant for 12-year-olds. And in this first little bit, we know that Mitchie wants to go to Camp Rock, but we don't really get any backstory on her. So if I was writing this story, I might have tried to add in like a little bit of a scene demonstrating how Mitchie has like a fairly low status at her school, or to further emphasize her dreams of being a singer, anything to justify the later like fairly drastic action that she takes to increase her status at the camp. The major plot point of this movie is literally Mitchie's lie, and I think that needs more of a foundation. Her status is like weirdly linked to her parents rather than herself. We get like no backstory on her, no ghost or past history with popularity. It would have just been interesting having a scene to establish the motivation. So after thinking about this for a while, I decided that the crisis of the scene isn't about whether Mitchie goes to Camp Rock or not. It's about whether she enters Tess, the queen bee of Camp Rock, if she enters Tess's world of stardom and popularity. So the extraordinary world isn't Camp Rock, because we get to Camp Rock too fast. The extraordinary world really is this like world of popularity with Tess. In Act 1, let's just go through the structure. The inciting incident, her parents tell her that she's going to Camp Rock. Progressive complications, we have her status and desire are established. We learn that the goal is to win the final jam. We learn a little bit about the hierarchy at the camp. There's a turning point where Mitchie meets a girl named Caitlin, played by Allison Stoner. Love Allison Stoner. And Caitlin tells her that Tess runs the camp. Then Tess comes over to them and Mitchie tells Tess that her dad owns a hardware store. And in that moment you see Tess and her little entourage dismiss Mitchie as an unimportant person. This is the turning point. Then there's a crisis, and the crisis is good. There's like this like in the music. Should Mitchie lie to gain popularity and status, or tell the truth and ruin her opportunity to be in with a pop star's daughter? Climax, Mitchie decides to lie about who her mom is in order to gain clout, and then resolution, Mitchie goes to sit with Tess et al. In the VIP section and agrees to move into their cabin. Hence, she has entered the extraordinary world. So I thought that was really interesting. We had kind of like, almost like a little bit of a prologue thing, then they get to Camp Rock, and then we really start the movie. We really start the story when she's already at Camp Rock, and then the extraordinary world is that popularity bubble. And I think, as lame as it sounds when you're an adult and you're discussing an extraordinary world of popularity, it is an interesting demonstration of how that extraordinary world doesn't necessarily have to be like the wardrobe in Narnia, you know? It can work in realistic contemporary fiction as well. So now we're in the middle. This is where I was very surprised at the sophisticated story techniques used in this movie. This movie has something called a double reversal, where both the protagonist and, in this case, one of the antagonists overcome a weakness to fulfill their need. So the double reversal is actually between Mitchie and Shane Gray. Shane Gray is that bad boy pop star who's like forced to work at the camp to fix his rep. We never, of course, find out what he does to become a bad boy pop star, which probably wouldn't be very Disney-ish. It's probably what all of the Disney stars were secretly doing anyways. So in the middle, Mitchie's weakness and need is very clear. Her weakness is she is intimidated by wealthy people. She's insecure and unconfident in her talent. She doesn't know if she has what it takes to make it, and she cares too much about her status and what other people think of her. Her need is to be true to herself and trust that her personality and authenticity will breed success. Shane's weakness is that he's the bad boy to the press. He's spoiled, selfish, fame has gone to his head, and he's like almost scared to, he's like very focused on commercialization. He is the person who has sold out. And his need is to rediscover his love of music and make music because he loves it, not because it will sell, aka to be authentic. Do you see like some themes here? This is a very heavily status story, status genre according to the story grid. I'll link status genre story grid stuff below. But basically, you see how they're like variations on the same kind of thing. Like Mitchie's way at the bottom, she really wants to work her way to the top. She has low status, she wants to gain high status, but she's kind of insecure, she's not sure. And throughout the movie, she'll go the sort of selling out, inauthentic, lying way to get there. Whereas Shane Gray has high status, and presumably he was a very good musician, authentic musician for a while, and now he's at the point where he's kind of sold out. That really speaks to the skill of the storytelling. All the characters are variations on the same problem. So Mitchie is the nobody. Shane is a high status who's sold out. Tess is a high status due to her mom, and she's like super desperate to preserve it. Caitlin was popular once, but now she doesn't care about her status and focuses on her talent. If you think of that, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's like a 4-corner opposition, and it's very strong. I will say more on this, but this theme of status, selling out, authenticity, talent is an incredibly strong through line. There may be ways that this story could improve, mostly through strengthening the characters' motivations and backstories, but that focus on the theme actually creates a very solid story. So we get to Act 2, which, I mean, figuring out these, what you call them, like 5 points was a bit tricky. It's not the be all end all, but I did my best. Okay, the inciting incident is in music class. Mitchie totally rocks singing her original song. This is the first time anyone's heard her sing, which changes everybody's opinion of her talent. There's a progressive complication where Tess manipulates Mitchie into joining their singing group. This means that Mitchie will sing back up to Tess. Another progressive complication, Mitchie builds lies upon lies, and she sneaks around to hide the fact that her mom is the cook and not the president of Hot Tunes TV China, which is the lie that she tells everybody. There's a turning point when there is a food fight in the cafeteria between Caitlin and Tess. This is kind of like the first ordeal. They're caught by the owner of the camp, who I call Uncle Mick Jagger dude because he introduces himself by being like, did I tell you I once met Mick Jagger? And he's also Australian. I cannot do an accent. All right, the crisis. Will Mitchie tell the truth or keep quiet to preserve her relationship with Tess? Oh, that probably needs more context. So after this food fight where they're caught by Uncle Mick Jagger dude, he like brings them to his office and he's like, this cannot happen. No food fights. Who threw the food first? And Tess says Caitlin did. But here's the thing, she didn't. Caitlin didn't start it, Tess did. And Mitchie has a crisis of, does she tell the truth and say, no, Tess started it, or does she lie to preserve her relationship and her popularity and her status? Climax, Mitchie keeps quiet, Caitlin gets in very big trouble. The resolution is that Caitlin is assigned to work in the kitchen, and this puts Mitchie's big secret in danger because she has to work in the kitchen to help her mom, who is the cook in the kitchen. Ah! Scary, so now like Mitchie's in jeopardy. Okay, so throughout this act we have scenes that shows Shane being a spoiled, lazy person. His actions are criticized by Uncle Mick Jagger and Mitchie. There seems to be a turning point where he's actually kind to somebody, and then he starts writing songs again, which is kind of interesting. His arc is present from like bad boy, like too cool to be here, and then like he kind of like mans over into like wants to change down for the camp, you know what I mean? His arc is present, but it's kind of weak. We get a lot of telling about his backstory. He's a bad boy, but we don't know what he's done. They say the label is very controlling of their band, but we never really get to see that. His change is kind of murky. Like, he goes from like having his Uncle Mick Jagger dude have to like pour water in his head to get him out of bed to go teach his class, and he's like really snappy in his class, and then one guy falls down, he comes over, he's like, you know, kind of nice to him, and then he's a new person writing authentic music. And so it's like, okay, I mean, it's a subplot, so it's okay, but like I feel like it could use more focus, and they really could have done a better job at showing that change and showing him like rediscovering his sound and his self and him not being a bad person. For a Disney movie though, I mean, we get some nuance. The love interest is kind of a jerk, and then he becomes not a jerk, and then they get together. I mean, nice, right? For a Disney movie, right? Okay. Act 3, inciting incident. In the kitchen, Caitlin comes in and realizes Mitchie is the cook's daughter and has been lying the whole time. And she says this excellent bit of dialogue, oh, this is rich, but apparently you're not. It's great. There's a progressive complication. Mitchie and Shane are now hanging out. They're hanging out by the lake. They get in a canoe. Shane tells her that he can never tell when people are being genuine around him. And then she's obviously lying about her famous mom. This really raises our stakes. So that's interesting. Mitchie's immoral actions are just kind of building and building at this point, and they also kind of sneak into her relationship budding romance with Shane, because at first it was just to be popular with Tess, and then now it's like part of how she gets her little boyfriend who she likes. So There's lots of moral dialogue. For example, Caitlin, once she knows about the secret, she decides not to tell anybody, but she says, like, it's fun being friends with Tess. Like, she's like, are you really okay with singing backup? And then Mitchie counters with a, being popular is so not a so what. Progressive complications. Lots of actual, like, moral dialogue. This is basically like the anatomy of story laid out. They did a really good job. Okay, we have our turning point when Tess sees Mitchie with Shane, and then, in another stunning coincidence of geographic proximity, she sees Mitchie and Caitlin with Mitchie's mom, so she knows the truth about Mitchie and she knows Mitchie is lying. Then, at our crisis point, after a concert, Tess asks Mitchie to tell them what her mom does again, and unfortunately, Mitchie's mom is outside, making eye contact with Mitchie, and the crisis is, should Mitchie hold the line and betray her mom, like literally right in front of her, or tell the truth and destroy her image? Climax, she tells the truth, revealing that she's been lying to everyone. Caitlin stands by her saying, you're a real jerk. The resolution of that is Shane ditches Mitchie and he's so mad at her. Caitlin walks her away to cry. Everyone's sad. Sad. Act 4. Inciting incident. Tess overhears Shane and Uncle McJagger dude talking. She realizes, oh, this is the other part, there's like this little Cinderella like subplot going on where Shane hears this mystery girl singing in the cafeteria and he wants to know who she is because it reminds him of who he used to be or something stupid like that. Anyway, she realizes that Mitchie is the girl that Shane is looking for, haha Cinderella, and she decides basically to screw over Mitchie, and she smiles and you're like, oh, she's forming a plan. That's our inciting incident. Now within this act, it becomes clear that like Mitchie's had kind of a self-revelation, but it's hard to nail down like an exact moment, if it was when she was framed in front of her mom, or I guess that must be when it is, but she was just kind of like forced to tell the truth, not really anything else. Was it when Shane called her out for lying? I don't know. She exchanges some good dialogue with Caitlin though, lamenting her stupid choices. It's clear she learned her lesson, but she never makes a moral decision. She never like demonstrates what she's learned. She just says it. And I think that's somewhere where this could really improve. So as this act goes on, we get another huge attack by Tess, our opponent. She gets Mitchie kicked out of the final jam. And by that happening, we kind of rob Mitchie of like any sort of moral decision. At this point, generally, like the protagonist, I feel, is supposed to have learned from what they were doing before and take action to be authentic. And I just don't think that we like close off with that in this story, because the opponent is still driving the plot. Tess is still driving the plot. Whereas generally when you get to the end of the story, it switches back. So like the protagonist starts driving the plot forwards. There's not really a moral decision, as I said. Like Mitchie just kind of says that she's learned something, which is good, especially for, I guess, kids. I give kids more credit, that if she just like chose the right thing, they would get the same idea as her saying that she learned something. It would have been nice to see Mitchie decide for herself to make a sacrifice in order to be herself, or at least have a choice about doing the right thing. Instead, she kind of just like works around what's handed to her, and she doesn't really have a big decision at all. And I think that's the biggest flaw in the story. They've done so much around this theme of staying true to yourself and being authentic and all this stuff. Mitchie never really demonstrates that to everyone. So if it were me, I would not have Tess orchestrate things so they get kicked out. I would have something happen such that Mitchie has a choice, like some sort of like she gets like a selling out, like lying again and winning, or like not doing that and losing type choice at the end around Final Jam. But that's not what happens, and let's find out what actually happens. So in the fourth act, instead of, I mean, I do kind of, sometimes I'll do the crisis climax resolution for the last act, but I really do feel like at this point you just have revelation, decision, action, revelation, decision, action, revelation, decision, action. And that's the best way I think of thinking about this last little stretch, because so much is happening so quick that really changes the story fast. So Revelations. In the cafeteria, Mitchie sits with her new friends. Yay! And then she stands up to Tess. She says, "Stop talking to me like that." And she and Caitlin, sorry, decide to team up to do Final Jam together after that, when Tess kicks Mitchie out of their group, obviously, and then Caitlin and Mitchie decide to team up to do Final Jam together. Decision. Revelation. Tess's bracelet is missing and she accuses Mitchie and Caitlin of stealing it. They find the bracelet in the kitchen. Uncle McJagger decides to ban them from camp activities until the end of Final Jam. That decision is Uncle McJagger dude's decision, because he can either ignore the incident and let them perform, or not ignore the incident and ban them when he bans them. Then we have a bit of a crisis, sort of. Mitchie and Caitlin are commiserating, and then they realize that Uncle McJagger dude just kept saying, "until the end of Final Jam." And they decide that, like, once the Final Jam is actually over, they can perform kind of while the judging is happening. So they decide to go out with a bang. This isn't really a crisis, it's more of like we can still perform, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the theme. This is what I think is the big problem in this movie. There is no crisis in the end. No moral decision. But we do have a lot of other self-revelations and, like, almost moral decisions from the other characters. For example, one of Tess's backup dancers has a revelation. She ditches the group and she decides to go out there and sing herself. Tess does really poorly. She kind of screws up, and then she realizes she's been mean. Shane realizes that Mitchie is the girl with the voice, which ends our Cinderella subplot. So fun! The battle is all the singing. Tess fails. Peggy, Tess's backup singer, rocks. Mitchie sings, and everything is forgiven between her and Shane. Yay! Felicitas Young! Happy ending! Resolution. Mitchie didn't get what she wanted. She did not win the Final Jam. Tess's ex-backup singer, Peggy, does, but she gets Shane, and she is true to herself. More yay, joy, and felicitations. And then we all get to sing together. Mitchie and Shane might start dating! Exclamation mark. Happy ending. Everybody, gets a self-revelation in this movie. Everyone's like, "Oh no, I was being not my best self. Now I'm gonna be my best self." But it's for children, so okay. I think it's nice that Tess learns how to be nice. I think that's a good lesson. Or she apologizes for being terrible to everyone for the entire movie. The good thing about that apology, though, going off on a little bit tangent here, is that people don't actually forgive her and she doesn't get mad. She's like, "I'm so sorry." And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then they, like, walk away. So that's fair. I feel like that's realistic. That, like, not everything's forgiven, so it's not all, like, it's all tied up in a bow, but, like, there's maybe, like, a little, like, fringe off the ribbon. All right. So was this story structure any good? Well, it was cheesy. The songs were cheesy. Some of the dialogue was a little on the nose and cheesy, but we have to understand the target audience, I guess. It's a bit too neat for my liking, as I said, but okay for kids, I guess. Demi Lovato gives very over-exaggerated smiles, like, all the time, which is annoying, and the song lyrics are so on the nose. There's, "Who will I be? I'm too cool for you. This is real. This is me." Just a hint here. "Who will I be?" She sings at the beginning. "This is real. This is me." She sings at the end. They're a little on the nose. But on the whole, I think the story worked well. Mitchie's story in particular, it went over very well. It was kind of risky and impressive of Disney to give their protagonist, like, an actual flaw. She lies, which makes her kind of unlikable, but then she learns her lessons. It does actually pack an emotional punch at moments, like being left out, bullying, desiring something more. Some of the interactions between Caitlin and Mitchie I really love, and I wish we got more of Caitlin in the movie. Not just because I love Allison Stoner, but partially because of that. In the end, yes, there were ways the story could have been strengthened, specifically giving the characters stronger motivations and an idea on their backstory. Like maybe changing the 5-minute intro to more of like an 8-minute intro? would have helped a lot. Streamlining Shane's character change, because honestly it's kind of all over the place. Giving Mitchie a real opportunity to demonstrate what she's learned, and make the win but lose, lose but win ending more poignant. Overall, though, the success should be judged by the target audience, and when I was in 12 years ago? When I was 11, we freaking loved this movie. My friend, who was in high school, by the way, came over to me and was like, "This is the best movie I've ever seen in my life." And I was like, "Oh, I must watch." Anyways, for a made-for-TV Disney movie, their story structure is actually quite sophisticated. The reason I watched this movie and did all this analysis is because I am writing a status story that has to do with the performing arts, and although this is not my target audience, it is YA, so it's like, you know, 7 years, 5 years or something older than the kids in this movie, but at the time it did pack really a punch, and I think I've learned a lot about this sort of story structure and what makes a good and slightly less than good status story. So let me know if you liked this video. I know that there are a lot of people who are not 23 who watch my channel and therefore are probably like, what the hell is Camp Rock? What is this, you child? And that's fine. If you got through it, let me know. Let me know if there are other stories that you're interested in seeing the story structure breakdown of. There's a few others on deck, so I'm really excited to keep doing this, and thank you very much. I will see you next time. Whatever. Okay, I just... Okay. So,